Hi everyone, I haven't picked a very good day to show you the end of this experiment, but I've got to go with it because it's the only time I've got. So there'll be a little bit of wind noise, unfortunately. Anyway, this is my above ground experiment with the compots, and I've been waiting for winter to be over, and then I got too busy. So today's the day, and we're about 2 months into spring, so I've really missed the end of the winter test, but still pretty much the same results no matter what. So we'll get started, and I'm going to pull all this apart and show you what's happened inside these pots and around the pots over that period of time. But first I want to show you something about this area around here where I've got the pots. This used to be a turkey mound, and the turkey had piled up every single leaf in my garden and made this massive big mound here. And there were actually 2 pots in the ground under here which were completely covered at one point from the mound. But over time, all that dirt has just slowly dropped down into the ground, and that's partly because worms try to level out soil, and partly because the soil has compacted down. But what's interesting in that process, that mound has almost disappeared now, and I thought I was going to have to dig it up and move it. Right, attempted to start doing that, but it was hard work. But what it's done, it's actually exposed one of my pots under here. Oh, I'll have to move the video and show you that. So it saved me the trouble of having to dig it up actually, and there's another one somewhere here that I've got to dig up. And I dug one up ages ago, and there was a little legless lizard hiding in there, which was really cute. And then the bush turkeys covered it up again. So there are 2 pots sitting around here in the garden somewhere that are not getting used, and I'd love to dig them up and start using them again. But let's get on with this experiment, and I'll show you what has happened inside these 2 containers over the last over the winter period. If you've ever worked in a hospital, you'll know where I get these blue sheets from, in an operating theatre. I'll show you inside first. So it's now been exactly about 32 days since I touched this, and I wanted to leave it for as long as I could from the last time I filled it up. And you can see this would have been all covered above here, but you can see all that leaf material has disappeared or broken down. We've had very little rain, so everything is super dry. So I'm not expecting a miracle inside here because it's just been too dry, and because I haven't been topping it up with waste, there's been no water going through it other than the very small amount of rain we had last week. You can see all the contents in the lid there have dried, but breaking down slowly nonetheless. Anyway, let's have a look. So that hasn't done much over the 32 days. As you can see, just so dry. Unfortunately, I have the time now of having background noise of schools out, and sorry about that. So here's some plastic that I would have put in there. You can see that had a cucumber in it. Lose my thing there. But I'll take that out now and put that in a bucket of water and clean that all out to get all that goodness out of there, and then throw that in the bin. There's some old eggshells that haven't completely decomposed, but just crush them up and put them on the garden. But everything's very, very dry, and I don't think there's probably any soldier flies left in here. So you could easily at this point with that toss it on your garden, mix it into the garden, water it in, and you'd have beautiful improved soil. And now I've got that screaming child next door. Should I leave that in the video? I feel sorry for that child. So look at that, a whole bunch of eggs in there together. Eggshells. Brush it up, back on the garden, no problem. So this is what's left inside the pot. So it's pretty much all turned to soil, most of it. Not all of it, but most of it. It's just a little bit dry now. If I added a bit of water to that, it'd reconstitute it beautifully. There's a little bit of paper that's from one of those miniature cakes I was eating. This was full of a lot of that paper, so it's pretty much all gone. And I will add in the picture of me filling it up. The last time I filled it up about 29 days ago. There's one that hasn't fully decomposed. So what we'll do is, I'm going to leave all that in there, and let's just take this out. Aha, and now look at that. A rat has eaten through there because that has been exposed at the side there. So ideally what you want to do is keep packing up your stuff around here, and if you keep doing that and you keep putting in your fermented waste, you shouldn't get this problem. But this has probably occurred because this area is overrun with rats, and I don't really have any problem with them in the ground, but because this has dropped down, rats got in here. And I think also because this is a bit low, if it was a little bit higher, I think it would be harder for the rats to get in. So something to consider when you do this in your garden, if you're going to put it in a place where you've got rats. Now these are corn cob. Now you can see how long these take a long time to break down, but eventually they break down, so it's just a matter of time. And just leave them a bit longer, and then they just crumble in your hands. So if you dug that into the garden and just spread it around the garden and threw some leaves or your grass clippings on top of it, or you could dig a little hole and put it in the garden, you could do that, or leave it for a bit longer, and eventually that will all fully turn to soil. But it's only been 32 days because I just wanted to see how long that would take. And there's a big bit of something. What is that? Piece of timber or something. Doesn't look like any piece of food. No, it's a piece of timber. Yeah, it looks like a bit of bark. So let's take this out. And again, now this has been very dry, no water, so you can see this looks like a little ant nest here. If you can see in the bottom there, I'll just dig this out and see what it is. Yep, they're ants. Now that's occurring because it's just so dry. If you had these in the garden, you're going to be watering your garden. I don't get time to do that, and my garden dies because I don't water it. But that's why you've got the ants there now, because all this soil has dried out, and it's a reason for them to get in here. But this was all paper around the side here, and I will show you the beginning of when I filled this up. And look how it's all just completely turned to soil now. Let's see if I can dig that out there. Look at that. So you could easily tip that all out now, spread it on the garden, water into the garden, and you've got beautiful, beautiful compost. But it's very rich, so you really do have to mix it in with other soil or water it in well into your garden. But over winter, and I didn't pack this, oh there's a bit, look at that, piece of glass. Now where's that come from, I wonder? I didn't pack this up much over winter at all. It took a lot longer to break down over winter around the side of the compot than it did in summer. So it's a little bit slower in winter, but it's still faster than in the ground because the worms keep coming up and taking everything down into the ground. But definitely slower over winter, and it didn't decompose around the side as quickly over winter as it does in summer. But that's okay, it just means you don't have to top it up as much. But that was all paper down there and just weeds and rubbish. And I've got a little, oh look at my little magpie here. Oh, hello little one. Where's he gone? He's getting some bugs. So I am actually pretty happy with that result. That's all turned to soil over that 3-month winter period. This is a bit of stuff I had shoved down the sides at one point. There's an avocado seed in there, and you can take that out now and put that in the bin if you want, or mix it into your soil. Who knows, it might grow or eventually it'll break down. But this was all paper. Look at that. It's all decomposed. Now, I'm going to show you underneath this. This particular pot, it's got holes in the side. See there? Holes in the side there. So if you were going to put this in a garden bed, you'd want to bury it up to there. That of course then means it's not going to be as portable as if you leave it on top. So I prefer a container that you can drill a couple of holes in the bottom, but it's up to you what you want to do and how much money you want to spend, because these are relatively inexpensive to buy. There's a piece of compost that I used to bring dug out of my bay composting. Hasn't. See how dry and hard that gets? Now, anyway, so let's tip this over and see what's underneath. Whoa, look at that. Now, there's a little ant nest in there. I've got a reasonable size hole in this, as you can see here. And I did that because I really didn't know how this experiment was going to work until I did it. So I think all you need is a couple of holes in the bottom. You don't really need a big hole like that. But if you want faster composting, put a big hole in and it'll certainly make it easy for the worms to come up and take everything down. Now you can see how the roots have grown up into that soil, and of course now all the ants too. There's a big hole right there. I wonder if it's a spider hole or an ant hole. Well, this is quite compact here where the roots are. So, interesting. You see how dry it is though. Look, no water, and because I haven't filled it up for 32 days, and this is stuff that was in the soil. It eventually finds its way to the top, any rubbish. So that's quite... I need my little fork. But you can see it wasn't that hard to move. So it's not like you've got big roots in there. But that's definitely a little root mass that has built itself up under the pot there. And nothing wrong with that in your garden. If you've got certain types of plants, great erosion, what would you call that? Erosion helper, is that the word? So I don't see that as a bad result at all, but if you move this around the garden, then you won't get that concentration, obviously, of a big pile of plants like that. I don't think that's a bad thing, but let's just tip out all the contents now anyway for a better, closer look. Now, in the bottom there, bit thick. Oh, bush turkey's coming over. Have a look. Nothing wrong with that. So I see them on top of these pots occasionally, and I saw a magpie in my house the other day with a little soldier fly in his beak, so I thought that was good, you know, it was feeding the birds. That doesn't bother me. So it is good food for the birds, the local birds. You can see there's some plastic. Hang on, let me get this in view. There we go. Bit of plastic. And this is when I'd pull out all the plastic. So what you can do is you can do this, you know, once or twice a year. Empty everything out. Get out the rubbish. You're looking for something to eat, little one. Come closer. Here's one of my little friends. Where is he? There he is. Here's one of my little friends. Coming looking for a feed. Actually, there's a few coming over. So, let's get back to here, getting sidetracked. So at this point, you know, Get out the big bits of plastic that don't get decomposed. But nothing wrong with this soil, look at that. It's still beautiful and moist inside that pot as compared to the ground where it had become quite dry. And that's from cardboard, actually, from my packing orders. Cardboard, sorry. Plastic from cardboard. Whoops, I'm going to get blown away here. That's over there. While they're doing that, the bush turkey is over here in one of my bays, which I'm going to start pulling apart this week, the video. See over in that far one, and the currawong sitting there waiting for all the morsels that he misses. He was just digging a minute ago, now he's stopped. And there's a little magpie there. So I've got 9 bays to pull apart and video soon. And show you all what's happened with them over, I think it's nearly been 2 years. Now back to here. So I'll show you underneath this one first, before, and I'll move it over to the blue to pull it all apart. So I'm going to lift this up and take it away. So the same thing has happened in this. See there? There's like a big mound of roots. Now, you have to remember though that I've got a big hole in the bottom of that pot. So it's not a little hole, it's a big hole. And I'll show you that in a moment. Where's my fork gone? So you can see again the roots coming up. But really, if that was in your garden, that would be pretty amazing, because just think of the erosion factor there, stopping all that soil from eroding away, and all the goodness that's going to those roots. Those roots have found their way over there. Mind you, it might be the only thing keeping that guava tree alive at the moment, because I haven't watered it and we've had no rain. Oops. Oh, there's lots of larvae in here. Come over here, boys. Come over here. Quick. Over here. Lots of larvae. These ones are wanting to pupate, you see, but they're underneath the they're underneath, and I don't honestly think they can get up. That magpie's loving those, though. I've just turned my video off again. Come over here, little one. Look, over here. Look, come on. Come here. Come on. Good boy. If you feed magpies, they won't attack you. So this pot has been hidden under the ground for years and years and years. This one was one of my first ones. And I've stood on it several times so you can see it's stuck in there. I'm going to have to come back to that. So, getting sidetracked. So let's get back to this. Look at all that beautiful root ball there. That would really stop so much erosion in your garden. A bit of metal. Where on earth did that come from? Okay, so let's go and empty this out. Now, you can see, again, I haven't touched this for 32 days, and you can see how it's all dropped around the outside there. And this was fully covered, and the rain would have washed all that poo off, but now it's all come back with no rain. It was such a small amount of rain. So let's see what's happened. So again, this one has also dried out because I've not been topping it up. I'll get a bit closer there. Well, when I say dried out, it's dried out on top. It's still quite moist under there. There's one of those things in the bottom of a chicken tray. Again, put that in a bucket of water overnight and get all that black goodness off it. Don't waste that. Look at this. See, that's pretty much all decomposed. Now the other thing, you know, if you don't want to put that straight on the garden, put it in a bucket of water overnight and make it into a few litres of juice and pour that back on your garden. There's a live soldier fly. See there? So they're still working. I'll throw him on the other pile. The bird will get him. So I'm pretty happy with this. This was full a month ago. Absolutely chock-a-block with food. I'll show you on the video in a minute. And look at that underneath. Now it doesn't look very interesting, but it's pretty much all decomposed. Mix it in your garden, spread it around the garden, do whatever you like. So let's pull this out now and see what's down the sides. And again, this was full of junk mail, paper. There's a little wormy, see there? Leave him, birds will get him. I'm going to chip this out onto that blue mat so I can see what it's doing. Beautiful, look, just beautiful. Now, I would have been surprised if this hadn't turned to soil, but it has. It's all completely turned to soil, look at that. So I filled this up at the beginning of winter. I topped it up. I don't think I topped this one up much either. Now, because this pot is, or this old bin is so high, the same would apply if you had a tall pot plant that you wanted to use. So what you need to do is put something in the bottom of it to raise the compot up so that it sits. And I don't think level with the top is good. I think it should sit a little bit low so you can cover it better. And that way then you'll also prevent, or you'll be able to keep up better with the contents disappearing around the side and then stop anything trying to get in around the side. But look at this. Oh, and look at the worms in there too. So there wasn't really, I didn't see any worms in the other one. Oh, look at them here. There's quite a few. And they're fairly small worms, so they've got a long way to grow. If I throw this out there now, the birds will go crazy. So maybe a bigger pot is better. But that is just beautiful soil. Nothing wrong with that at all. So let's tip it out here. Now this is what, I better show you what I did in the bottom here. This is what I did to the bottom of this bin. I cut a big hole in it. I really don't think you need a big hole. And I cut those holes in it, and I think those holes are probably adequate, but I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to get at this. So this is going to look like a big lump now. And I take So again, you can see how all the roots have grown into there, but not many have really grown in where I had the little holes, just those big holes. Now I've got a top in here because that gave me the perfect height to put inside my bin to sit my compot on. Well, it wasn't quite perfect, but it was close enough to perfect. Let's come back a bit. So here's the top. And here are the roots that have grown up through the bottom. Now you wouldn't get that if you had just a couple of holes in the bottom. They've really gone to town. Look at this. They've really spread out. look at that. If you move that around the garden a lot, you wouldn't get this, because it's just going to be continually going into the ground wherever you move it. This is only because I've had it sitting in exactly the same spot for a long period of time. So the birds love the cockies. I'll come to that in a minute. That's quite a big root ball there. This one's quite dry, very dry compared to the other one. This was the pot inside. See how I cut the centre out and I used it to put the pot on top of it. But you know, you could use some bricks or whatever you want to use in your garden. I don't know. Depends on the size of the pot you're using. I've just got to fix this. And they're coming for all the little critters. You guys, come over here. There's lots over here. So this is around, this is what I really wanted to see, what's around the pot. Look at that, all beautiful soil. These are from envelopes. Junk mail. See? Bank statements. I think this might have had shredded paper in it. You don't realise how much plastic you get in those things until you compost it down and then pick it out. It's a lot. There's full of worms. There's heaps of worms in this one. There's another little one, see? So there's lots of worms in this one. And maybe the size might make it better for worms, I don't know. But I waited till everything had pretty decomposed, so they've probably moved on elsewhere. They won't stay somewhere if there's nothing there to eat. You've got to constantly feed them. It's interesting though that there's glass in here as well. So bits of glass. Oh, there's a big piece. I mean, how does that get in there? Did the worms do that? Or did I put it in there with some leaves maybe? These little guys here. They're having a field day. So I'm going to leave this here for them to pick through. But you can see that piece there, which was right underneath the pot, and I haven't touched it for 32 days, is super dry. So just like your garden, you need to keep your compost moist, otherwise it's, oh, goodness gracious me. I think I'll leave this out here for the bush turkey to pull apart. It'll make pretty much short work of that, I reckon. I keep getting out of the picture here. There we go. To me, that's a beautiful result. So, empty your pot once or twice a year and start again. So now these two bins I've got are ready to go again, and I will go again because I want to make sure that it does exactly the same in different conditions. I don't know, I might try something else next time. But it's a great way, a simple way of getting rid of compost. Really, really easy. It's quick. It won't nourish your soils the same way though. As you can see, those roots came up, but it's not nourishing deep down in the ground as when you put your compost in the ground. You're much better off putting it in the ground if you can, and you won't get that same issue with rats chewing around the side, because they don't really go down that deep. Well, I suppose they would, but I've never ever had it happen before. But I've got to confess too, I don't tend my pots very well. I just empty them once a week or every few weeks because I just don't have time. And because of that, they were allowed, the outside rim was allowed to drop down too much and allow a space for bugs to get in. But if you keep on top of it and do the right thing, I'm pretty sure you will be alright. If I leave this here tonight on this plastic, those worms won't have a hope. That turkey and these little magpies will come and devour everything. But that's a beautiful result. Look at that soil. I mean, you can't beat that. Even with all that plastic in there. Oh, where is it? There we go. Just take the plastic out. And again, if you want to make wormweed out of that, put in a bucket of water. Strain it to get the plastic out, but mix it with a lot of water, probably 1 part to 5 or 10 parts water, and then pour it back on your garden. Or, as I say, pour it on the lawn, because your lawn doesn't get anything. Oh, we've got a fight going on here with the magpies. They're getting territorial about getting into the compost heap. I'll stand back for a minute and see if I can get that on video. Off you go, boys. Hoe in. A couple of currawong in the background there too, but the magpies have superiority over the currawongs, and the bush turkey will come along and chase them all away if I wasn't here.